Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Belgium once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before, albeit the last reviews that I did from this brewery featured on the channel back in about 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But these guys are a very well respected Belgian brewery. They're part of the kind of new generation of Belgian brewers, of course, but they do a wide variety of different styles, and the beers have always been pretty damn good in my experience. So yeah, when I get the chance to try something new from them, it is something that I'm quite interested in. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from these guys before, a style that I do quite enjoy though, and apparently this beer is something that they consider somewhat of a flagship beer for them, in fact, because they do a lot of different things, but this one is very popular and one that they enjoy themselves. So it should be quite interesting because it was a random find here in Hong Kong as well. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to the kind of northwestern part of Belgium, because of course Belgium sits at that kind of 45-degree northwest southeast sort of angle, but we're going to Vlaanderen, Flanders, which is the Dutch speaking region, and we're going to go to a little town called Oostvleteren or Eastvleteren, which is quite close to Ypres, a very historic town incidentally, Ypres, so do go and visit it. But going to Oostvleteren means that we are going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Struise Brouwers, and this particular beer is called Pannepot. So this one comes in at 10% ABV. It is a Belgian strong dark ale. We should also point out that this one is the vintage edition, and it's also the 2022 release. So yeah, those are the kind of things you need to be aware of when you try beer from the Struise Brouwers. Sometimes or usually what you have is the actual kind of base beer almost, then sometimes you have the vintage edition, and then yeah, you've got the different annual releases actually. So yeah, if you try the Struise beer, those are things to be aware of. But yeah, this is a beer that I picked up at Angry Beer in Mongkok here in Hong Kong, and I just saw this one and wondered what it was, and saw that it was from the Struise and thought, you know, you need to check this one out. And then it turns out later that it is one of their one of the beers that they consider to be their flagship beers. So yeah, 10% Belgian strong dark ale. This one, I do enjoy my big malty brown sugary Belgian beers, so I think this one will be pretty damn good actually. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Struise Brouwers before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Belgian playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, not as often as I would like here in Hong Kong, in all honesty. But yeah, hopefully I can get over to Belgium at some point and pick up a few more interesting Belgian beers for you. But yeah, check out the playlist of beers from other countries because there are interesting things on the channel. But let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the Struise Brouwers once again then. So, the Struise Brouwers, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Oostvleteren in Vlaanderen in Belgium, and the brewery was founded back in 2001. But the four men behind the company in the beginning were Carlo Gruttert, Peter Brem, Philippe Diezens, and Urban Coteau. But Urban and Philippe apparently owned an ostrich farm that also had accommodation, and they basically wanted to develop some beers that were distinctive to their particular local region. And so they started to collaborate with Carlo fellow who was a local winemaker. But eventually in 2003, the brewery was officially founded and they started brewing their beers at the Callier brewery in northern Hainaut, and then they continued there apparently until 2006, and then they moved their brewing to Deca in Oostvleteren, and then in 2014 they started brewing their beers at their own brewery, which is known as Het Oude Schuitje, which is the little old school, and that was of course in Oostvleteren. But over the years, this brewery have become very decorated. They're known for their stronger and barrel-aged beers, of course, and they've also got a tasting room on site, and they've produced over 160 different beers according to Untappd as of the time of filming, which is August 2024. But the name of this brewery, de Struise, comes from the Flemish word for ostrich. And so they've got ostriches on a number of their labels. I'll show you that on the little crest on the back in a little second. But apparently Struise is also like a Flemish word, a slang word for tough as well, which is something they wanted to reflect in their with their regionality and things like that. But yeah, like I said to you, these guys do quite a diverse variety of different styles, and their beers are very, very well regarded. So yeah, I saw this one in Angry Beer, and just thought, oh yeah, I've not had anything from de Struise in quite a long time, so let's get one of these and have a look at it. And it turns out that they consider this a flagship beer. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about the Struise Brouwers for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So the beer's sweating a wee bit because it's getting quite warm in here actually. But yeah, you can see this one has a ship on it because apparently Pannepot, they consider this beer to be like an old fisherman's ale. So it kind of makes sense that they've got a fishing sailboat on the front of this one. But like I said, this one is the vintage edition. It's the 2022 release. You can see plain gold top there. But on the back of the beer, you can see the de Struise kind of crest, if you like. So it has the ostrich on it, of course, because two of the guys were ostrich farmers. One of the more unusual stories that I've come across on the years doing the channel, of course, when it comes to brewers' backgrounds. But like I said to you, probably the best way to describe this beer is as a Belgian dark strong ale or Belgian strong dark ale, whichever way around you want to put it. And that's what they say on the bottle here as well, a dark strong ale from Flanders. But yeah, 10% ABV this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see how we go. So yeah, quite curious about this. I know my good friend Thomas Groendam over at Thomas Opent, he loves the de Struise beers, and he and I have talked about going to visit this brewery and filming an out and about video at some point. So that is something that we do need to make happen in the future. So I need to talk to him about that. But yeah, a tour of Belgium to visit the Trappist breweries and the Lambic breweries and stuff like this is something that really needs to be considered. So you can look forward to that at some point in the next couple of years. But yeah, we've got this beer out and into the glass now, and it looks pretty good. It actually looks a bit like an imperial stout, in all honesty. But yeah, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it's poured with about a 1/4 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn, light tan coloured head there. That is going to fade away to be a thin foamy layer, but of course if I sugar the beer up a little bit, you know, the head does come back quite readily there. Just like have a little look at the colour of that. But yeah, if we shine the light through this beer, I said it looks a bit like an imperial stout, but yeah, it is more of like a very dark sort of chestnutty, rosewoody type colour. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass though, a few little bits of carbonation going up toward the surface of the beer there. But yeah, that head has faded away just to give you a very kind of thin, foamy layer there. But yeah, all in all, it looks pretty nice. The colour of this one, as I say, pretty dark. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour as well. And that is something you do need to be conscious of with Belgian beer, because quite often they will put like brewing sugar or some kind of candied sugar into their beers in Belgium, and that's why they have the higher ABV, but they have the lighter mouthfeel and the more kind of the slightly bigger carbonation. Sometimes you find that it's very common to do that with brewing in Belgium, in fact. But yeah, appearance-wise, with regard to what you would expect from a Belgian strong dark ale, there's nothing unusual about this one. So let's leave it at that for the appearance and go on and have a little look at the aroma of this beer, because I have to admit I am very, very curious. So, oh, it's quite nice. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of giving you everything that you would expect, in all honesty. So, yeah, there's a lovely mix of things going on with this particular beer. So, yeah, you have a little bit of you've got everything you want. You've got the kind of yeasty character that is kind of characteristic of Belgian beers. So you've got that big brown sugary cakey sort of thing as well. But yeah, toasty brown sugars, a little bit of hoppy character, nice little bit of fruitiness. You've got everything you would want from the Belgian strong dark ales. I'm a huge fan of the Belgian quadruples, of course. I love my big brown sugary beers, German doppelbocks, Scotch ales, American barley wines, Belgian quadruples. These kind of things are right up my street. So yeah, the Belgian strong dark ales I do enjoy. And you can just tell from the aroma, this one is going to be pretty damn nice, actually. So, yeah, for me, the aroma of this beer, when I think about the other beers that I've had in this particular category, it's a mix of cake and bread. It's very smooth, actually. So let's just break this down and describe it for you a bit more in depth, as we always do. So the backbone of this beer, it is like a slightly toasty, rye bready bread crust that comes out of there. Of course, you've got little elements of woodiness in there. You've got a little bit of kind of crackery note as well. So yeah, there's woodiness, there's cracker in there. You've got a sweet rye bready note. You've also got a little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character to this one as well. So yeah, you've got the sweet kind of smooth rye bread in there. There's a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker. Yeah, so there's a kind of rye bready note in there. There's a little bit of a, it's like a sweet, smooth and slightly dry rye bread, but yeah, you've got a bit of wholemeal brown bready character in there. But there's almost a little bit of a kind of cakey element to this beer. So it's a mix of like a caramelly and chocolatey. I don't know if chocolate is the right word. It's more like a kind of brandy soaked fruit loaf brown bread. It's kind of like that, actually. So yeah, you've got rye bread, you've got wholemeal brown bread, then you've got that slightly caramelly sponge brandy soaked fruit loaf type bready note coming out of this one. So the mix of everything in there is really, really interesting. So yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that regard, I think, is really interesting. But big, it's got a little bit of phenolic character coming out of it in that regard too. You know, these kind of cough syrupy medicinal type notes, and there's a wee touch of nuttiness mixed in with the bread as well. But yeah, on top of the breadiness and the cakiness, you start to get the brown sugar out of this one. So yeah, you can smell there's a little bit of a sort of toasty brown sugary backbone in there. There's a little bit of leathery brown sugar in there as well, and very often with these beers, with the Belgian beers, sometimes you will get, when you've got leathery brown sugar, usually that's a sign of a slightly longer wort boil, and some Belgian brewers like to do that. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, a more leathery brown sugar in there, and then yeah, you do have a little bit of that sweet caramel, but also a little bit of that more treacle molasses type note coming out of this one. There's certainly little elements of biscuit in there, but yeah, you've got this bright kind of crispy brown sugary character sitting on top as well. As I said earlier, some kind of nutty notes protruding their way out of this one, but yeah, all in all, the way that the fruity side of this beer goes together, I think, is is very, very nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, it's good. So on the yeah, I think on the malty side of things, this beer goes together really, really quite well. But yeah, I think the yeasty side of things, I would say, it's quite similar. It's more of that kind of cakey type note that I was talking about. You know, the sort of caramel sponge cake. You've got a little bit of sort of crackery note to it, and a wee bit more of like a wholemealy, slightly farmhousey brown bready character. So on the back of the nose, yeah, cracker, a little bit of the wood, the kind of farmhousey brown bread, and then yeah, you've got that. Yeah, as I say, you've got that sort of more of the, yeah, like brandy soaked bready character. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together is really nice in this one, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, the malty yeasty side of this beer, it's kind of what you'd expect, but it's just really nicely done, and that's what you always get with the Struise, in all honesty. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, so you know, Belgian hops, and I think quite often with Belgian brewers they do like to use their own hops. For me, Belgian hops are kind of a mix of the German noble hops and the English hops. So they've got a little bit more of that herbal earthy thing that you would expect of English hops, but they do have the slightly brighter, smoother, grassy and floral component of the German noble hops. And all of that is kind of evident in the green component that you get in this particular beer. And you can say that generally of the Belgian quadruples and the Belgian strong dark ales. So yeah, you've got that little bit of, you've got a little touch of earthiness in there. You've got a little bit of kind of earthy, you've got the earthiness there. You've got a little bit of woodiness and a little bit of herbal character. There's more of a kind of floral note in there as well. And there's little bits of grassiness. But the green component, of course, is not the most prominent or the most memorable part of the aroma of this beer. You can safely say that. But the fruity side of this beer is really, really nice. I'm getting some really rich kind of plummy notes out of it. A lot of blackcurrant though. Loads and loads of blackcurrant in this one. So yeah, for me, yeah, I don't know if I'd go say that there's raisin in it because it doesn't seem quite sharp enough for that. But big, big juicy plums, definitely some prune, big juicy figs, blackcurrant, and yeah, maybe there's just a little bit of blackberry. But like I said earlier, you do get quite a little bit of that sort of phenolic-y, medicinal quality out of this beer, but I think that's most likely coming from the sugar that's added in and its interaction with the yeast. But yeah, the hoppy side of this one, the fruity side of things, is definitely plums, figs, and blackcurrants for sure. But a really interesting aroma, this one, I have to say. So as I always say in these videos, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because that's always half the experience when it comes to craft beers. But let's have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Pannepot Vintage Edition 2022 release from the Struise Brouwers in Oostvleteren, Vlaanderen, over in Belgium. Let's get stuck into this. Slange, skål, cheers, proost, santé. Ooh, that's very nice. And I have to admit, one thing that I always, the last beers that I had from De Struise, they were imperial stouts. I think they were aged in different barrels and things, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I remember having some imperial stouts from De Struise, and I remember thinking that these beers were packed full of flavour, but they're quite light in their mouthfeel. And this beer kind of is exactly the same as that. It really has that little bit of has that big flavour. That was a big crack in my finger there, but yeah, it has that big flavour, but they're just really quite light in the mouthfeel. I don't know if it's the water, the local water or something like that, but yeah, I've always found that the Struise beers are just that bit lighter. So an interesting point about these, but yeah, in terms of what you'd expect flavour-wise from a Belgian strong dark ale, it delivers, and it delivers really well. So yeah, you've got your breadiness in there, you've got your bit of cakiness, the brown sugar, a little bit of hoppy character, and the fruitiness, everything you'd want. But let's break this beer down then, describe the flavour more in depth as we always do, and enjoy it a little bit, because yeah, it is very good. yeah, that is nice. The more that you drink of it, it leans more toward that kind of cakey, medicinally type end of the spectrum. So I like that. But yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that sort of nice toasty rye bready bread crust coming out of this one, which I think is great. So yeah, nice toasty rye bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, it does have a little bit of woodiness in there, that's for sure. And you've also got this little bit of kind of crackery character sitting on top of that too. But yeah, above the slightly crackery character, you're getting a little bit more of you're getting a little bit more of a kind of rye. There's definitely a sort of kind of rye bready layer coming out of this coming out of the beer there. So yeah, nice bit of rye bready character in there, and on top of all of that, on top of the rye bready layer, the rye bready character actually has a wee bit of nuttiness to it, which I think is interesting. But yeah, the next layer up, you have this more wholemeal brown bready character. So yeah, you've got your bread crust, which almost has a little bit of char. If you go further back on the palate, the bread crusty backbone has a wee bit of more of a kind of charred character to it as well. So yeah, you've got your bread crust, the wood, the little bit of cracker, the rye bready note with a wee bit of nuttiness, the wholemeal brown bread, and then above that you start to get a more kind of chocolatey, you do get that sort of chocolate spongy kind of character out of the beer, which I do like as well. So yeah, this sponge cakey character that's in there, that lingers into the aftertaste, and it does give you quite a wee bit of sweetness. So yeah, it's like a caramel sponge, but it has a little bit of that almost like brandy or sherry soaked fruit loaf type thing to it, which is kind of interesting too. But then above that layer, you start to get the brown sugary side of the beer. So you can feel the first layer of the brown sugar is the more toasty layer, of course. And it does have a wee bit of dryness to it, particularly into the aftertaste. But then above that, you get the little circle in the middle of your palate. So you get this kind of leathery brown sugary character, which again, it has a wee bit of a nutty character into the aftertaste. So yeah, you've got that in there. Then on top of that, you've got the sweeter caramelly notes, maybe a little bit of like Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch as well. But the dead center of your palate with this beer is a kind of treacle molasses type note. Yeah, and then sitting on top of all of that, you've got little bits of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type character too. So yeah, the middle third of your palate is definitely where the complexity in this beer sits. And it delivers, it gives you all the flavours you'd expect. But like I say, the surprising thing about this beer is the lightness of the mouthfeel. But that's kind of a, how'd you say, like a trademark of the brewery, maybe? That's just how I've always found their beers. But yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice. So that's the middle third of the palate covered. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. So as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out a little bit further back. And the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the kind of rye bready character underneath, the wholemeal brown bready character sitting on top of that, and a wee bit of that more kind of sponge cakey note sitting on top. But yeah, the base of the back third of your palate, you have, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the kind of toasty rye bready bread crust in there, which has a little bit of a kind of charred character to it almost on the back third of your palate. Then you've got that Jacob's cream crackery element sitting on top there. Then you've got some nice rye bready notes there, which are a little bit dry. That layer is a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. and it is a bit drier, but you do get a wee bit of almost brown sugary sweetness out of it as well. You've got the wholemeal brown bread there, which again is lighter, taller, drier, and more airy. Pardon me, but it does have that wee bit of dry brown sugary character to it almost. And then yeah, the next layer up is the kind of sponge cakey notes with the brown sugar, that kind of brandy sherry soaked fruit loaf type thing. But on top of all of that, you can feel some of the kind of drier aspects of the brown sugar just creeping over the top there, and more toasty brown sugary notes as well. But yeah, above everything else on that back third of the palate, you start to get the yeasty character out of the beer. So let's have a little look at that yeasty side of things. But yeah, the yeasty side of the beer for me, the yeasty side of the beer for me, the dead centre of it, you can feel it's that sweet, oily, rye bready character there. Then around the edge, you have that, you've got a bit more of a kind of sweeter brown bread, and then the very edge of it is like that brandy soaked, yeah, it's that more kind of brandy soaked, fruit bready sort of thing actually. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of goes together, I think is really, really nice. Yeah, the yeasty character in this beer, it does, yeah, it's more, yeah, mix of like sweet rye bread and sort of brandy soaked fruit bread kind of thing. So you can feel all that on the back third of your palate, as I said. But definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But it's really good. I like that. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. The only other thing we can add is that it gets a bit nutty and a bit more woody into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So, back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit more of a kind of woody character and a little bit of a herbally note. But then yeah, as you push further forward along the sides of the palate, you start to get a little bit more floral aromaticity out of it, a little bit of light grassiness around the front curve of the tongue as well. But yeah, the way that that goes together is quite interesting, this one. The grassiness has a little touch of zestiness to it at this point, but if this is a 2022 release, maybe this beer is about 2 years old at the time of drinking, but they do say it's vintage, of course, so it says the 12th of April 2022. Kind of interesting that that only made it to Hong Kong now actually. So yeah, that's the green component in this one. So it still lingers there even if this beer is 2 years old, because remember, your hoppy character, specifically the green component, will drop out of the beer gradually as time goes on. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, just to round off the tasting section of this video. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. You've got the kind of rye bready character in the base, the wholemeal brown bread on top, and then a bit of the cakey sort of thing. The base of the front third of your palate, yeah, you've got the toasty rye bready bread crust, the rye bread above that, the wholemeal brown bread, and a little bit of the cakey sort of note, then a drier brown sugary character. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at the fruity side of things then and see how we go. Yeah, the fruity side of the beer, I will say it's a little bit more kind of sharper, if you like, in the flavour than I was expecting it to be from the aroma. But yeah, the type of fruits you're getting is what I would have expected. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, on the fruity side of things, you're getting a little bit of sharper raisin there. Underneath that, pardon me, of course, you are getting a little bit of a kind of like juicy plum. There's prune under that. There's a little bit of date, of course, bit of sultana type flavour. And as you move further forward into the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a, yeah, there's a little bit more of a kind of figgy type note. And then yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, yeah, there's a little bit of blackcurrant in there, and a wee bit of like blackberry almost sitting on top of that. So yeah, the way all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is really, really quite nice. The fruity side of this one, you do get a bit of like oily pear out of it into the aftertaste too, and in that border region you can feel a wee bit of the kind of phenolic type flavour pushing its way out also. So yeah, this beer, it's a really nicely done take on the Belgian strong dark ale, but nothing unexpected. I think that's a fair way to describe this one. So thumbs up to the Struise Brouwers for another really, really solid beer. I can't say much more than that. But let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. As I've said many times in this video, one of the trademarks of the Struise Brouwers is the beers are always big flavoured, but they just, to me, they just feel that little bit lighter in the mouthfeel. So yeah, I would describe this one as being like top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle to it in this one, but overall the beer is quite smooth and kind of light, I would say. It tells me on the back of the bottle that the IBU of this one is 27, so I don't really need to guess that. I have to admit, I probably wouldn't have thought it was that high. I would have thought it was about 20-ish, to be honest with you. But the malt base, as we said, it's got a bit of toastiness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, a bit of a drier sweetness on top, and yeah, the fruity side of things in this particular beer, yeah, the fruity side is a little bit sharper in the beginning, but it mellows out really nicely. But all in all, a really interesting beer, this one. Quite cool to try one that they consider to be their flagship beer, and again, nice to return to this brewery after quite a wee while, and it feels like my first Belgian beer in quite some time as well. So yeah, quite happy to do this review, even though I'm a little bit tired at the time of filming. But yeah, this one was the Pannepot Vintage Edition 2022 release, a 10% Belgian strong dark ale from the Struise Brouwers in Oostvleteren in Vlaanderen, the Dutch-speaking region in the kind of northwestern part of Belgium. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Struise Brouwers as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out their social media. Let me know your favourite beers from this brewery in the comments section below. Let me know what other beers I should try from these guys, and let me know some other Belgian beers and breweries that I should check out as well. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in another review very, very soon. This was the Pannepot from the Struise Brouwers in Oostvleteren, Vlaanderen, over in Belgium. Sláinte, skål, cheers, proost, and santé.